So what's going on, guys? So today we're going to be adding a little bit more life to our animation. So if you remember correctly, we left off with our bouncing ball, which was as what we can see here. So it's going straight up and down, but there isn't really much life to it. So we're getting the basic principle, the basic animation. So we've got a series of still images played together in sequence to give us the appearance of movement. But what we can do is we can begin to apply the principles of animation, or some of the principles of animation, to make this look more lively, more realistic. So in this example here, we can see that we've got more movement happening. What we've applied two key principles of animation, one being easing in and easing out, and the other being squash and stretch. And how do we achieve that? So as you can see here, we've got onion skinning turned on. So over the first 6 frames of our animation, our frames are very close, or our ball is very close together in each frame. The closer that our images are in each frame, gives us a slower and smoother animation. As the ball descends and starts to pick up speed, then we see that it begins to be further apart, which means that will happen quicker. So we've got a nice easing into the animation, and then when it reaches the bottom, again closer together to ease out. Same principle works in reverse here. So slow back to the top. As said before, we also look at the principle of squash and stretch. So as it reaches its fastest part of the fall, of the descent, which is frame 8, we can see that our ball has stretched slightly, but we're maintaining the same volume, because what we don't want to do is stretch it to a point where it looks like as though the ball itself will actually become bigger. No, we just want to adjust what we have to so the volume doesn't increase. We've still got some stretch happening on frame 9, and then when it hits the ground on frame 12, then we get some squashing, and then that deformation starts to be undone on frame 13. So again, maintaining that volume, and then back up again. So we know how to move our frames in our animation. So if we go back to our original, where we've got them roughly evenly spaced throughout, so to move our frame, so this is frame 1, so we're going to want to bring frame 2 up. So simply click on to our frame, select our free transform tool. We can use the arrow keys with our ball selected. So I'm just going to hit the up arrow just to bring that closer to the top, because remember, we're going for the easing in and easing out. Do the same with frame 3. So we've got onion skinning turned on, so we can see this happening nicely. So roughly the same. Frame 4, we're going to bring that up also. Frame 5. Start to get some movement on it. And frame 6, we're going to bring that one quite close as well. So we have a nice easing out. Frame 7, bring that up slightly, but keeping it off, so we're starting to pick up speed. And then frame 8, that is going to be the fastest part of the descent, so let's start to adjust that. So we're going to make it longer, so we're going to grab it at the top and we're going to stretch it, but then also remember, we want to maintain the volume. So if it's stretching upward, then it's going to be stretching inward also. Might move that up ever so slightly. Let's have a look at that. So you can already see that is starting to happen nicely there. So let's go back to our 8th frame. So we've got our nice stretch happening there. So let's go to frame 9. So we're going to bring frame 9 down also, and we're going to have not so much stretch, so we're going to bring it in slightly, and nowhere near as much of the stretch that we had on our previous frame. Frame 10, we're going to bring that down. Frame 11, we're going to have that touching the floor as it is. And then frame 12, let's bring him up. And then now we're going to want to stretch that. So we can use that top of the ball in on our onion skin there as our guide. So we're going to stretch out, and we're going to stretch it down. Let's bring it down slightly. Again, we're going to stretch out a bit. Down, remember, maintaining that volume, because this is going to be the maximum squash. Alright, so we're now dealing with the squash. So from into that squash and then up to frame 13, we're going to select that frame and we're going to bring it up. So we've got the base at the same section, but we're going to want a little squash happening there. Let's bring it down slightly so we get a smooth movement back into the top. Let's bring it down a little bit more. There we go. However, so slightly. Good. And then back up again. So let's have a look and see how that looks now. Alright, let's watch that on loop. So now we've got a little more movement happening with our bouncing ball. I feel like still that those first few frames up there, we can have those even a bit closer together. So maybe bring frame 5 up a bit more. Frame 4, sorry, bring 5 up a bit more, just to really emphasize that slow easing in. Let's bring this one up slightly. So let's have a look at that now. There we go. Alright, so now what we have is we have some nice easing in and easing out. We've got a bit of squash and stretch happening there to give our animation more feeling, more life, more vibrance, more movement, and those are two of the key principles of animation to help make our animation more alive.